Welcome to the motherfucking relay. We're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. Shannon Ryan's crafty victory over veteran Farah El Bousairi of Spain. What was a very intelligent performance, poised from young Shannon Ryan in the super flyweight division, ticking off on many boxes. Jab work, feints, right hands, lots and lots of right hands. I think that was the star of the show, beating Farah El Bousairi to the punch at every turn. There was a noticeable difference in speed within close quarters, which just so happens to be Shannon Ryan's sweet spot. She has to get there because she's noticeably smaller than most other super flyweights, noticeably smaller than Farah El Bousairi. See the difference in size almost immediately. That's going to be a factor in most fights that Shannon has as a super flyweight and perhaps one day as a bantam or a super bantam, but she did a fantastic job of defending herself within close quarters in the kill box, keeping those hands at home and countering out of the guard. At the same time, keeping the work neat and tidy. That Shannon's punches were not punches that you had to look for. It wasn't messy. It wasn't scrappy. She was giving herself just enough room, mid-range to inside, to get the punches out, and they were clean and clear punches. You didn't have to look for them. That boils down to footwork, that she's not falling so far in, she's smothering her own work. Her punches. That's distance control, and to some extent, that is poise, that is patience. For a smaller fighter that's looking to get in close, a lot of the time you see they overshoot the distance and end up way on the inside. Too damn close. Not Shannon. She was light on her feet, in and out, managing the distance very well. That boils down to footwork, and that boils down to poise, patience, picking the right moments to strike. So often for fighters of smaller stature, they're so focused on getting close to their opponent, they come busting through the front door, overshoot the distance, end up way on the inside, smothering their own work, and things just get very chippy after that. Noticeable improvements from Shannon Ryan, pacing herself throughout the entirety of the fight. No gas tank issues to report. Nice, steady pace for the match. There was a sort of scare in the third round, what looked like an off-balance shot. As Shannon was closing the distance, she had Farah on the ropes, and it looked like Farah knocked her down. Looked like an off-balance shot to me. Either way, they ruled it a knockdown, but Shannon handled it really well. Didn't lose her cool, didn't go chasing the round. Her temperament, trying to get her lick back. She kept her cool, kept her shape, got back on the saddle, and got back to piling up the points. It was a stellar performance from Shannon Ryan. Now there is a question as to how far off is she from challenging for an alphabet title, and whether or not she should have a rematch with Emma Doolin before or after that. What should come first? A world title opportunity or a rematch with Emma? And I think a rematch with Emma. I think they should do that first. Emma gave Shannon Ryan her first professional loss 2 or 3 fights ago. For me, it was a bit controversial because she scored a knockdown off what looked like a rabbit punch, a punch to the back of the head. The referee didn't call it. Emma is a good fighter, statuesque for the weight, lots of height, lots of length, and she's a good boxer, still unbeaten. Shannon may want to avenge that loss before moving on to world title honors. This was her first fight of this year, leaving the door open for 2, maybe even 3 more fights. During the broadcast, I heard them say that Shannon Ryan had hired a new training team. I wasn't aware that she was in the market for a new corner. Still improving, still learning. Sharp is the best way to describe the performance in a word. She was very sharp, very much switched on, nothing to complain about. No noticeable deficiencies, no noticeable lapses in judgment. It was a complete performance. The only thing that was missing was perhaps a knockout or some knockdowns, but overall, Shannon's boxing is on point. Very nice. In the main event, the rematch between then unbeaten Johnny Fischer and veteran fighter Dave Allen, the White Rhino. It was a big upset if you're going by how the odds makers had it, because I'm fairly confident they had Johnny Fischer, the favorite, going in, and he was looking the part at the start. A lot of jab work, a lot of movement. In the first 2 or 3 rounds, noticeably busier than Dave Allen. Now, you could almost accuse Dave in the first 1 or 2 rounds of playing possum because there wasn't a lot coming from him. Not a lot of output, not a lot of punches, just inching forward, trying to get closer and closer to Johnny Fischer. Things start to heat up in the third. You see Dave trying for more punches, and just like in the first fight, there was a noticeable difference in when Dave lands a punch and when Johnny lands a punch.
Power.
Johnny lands a jab, Dave shakes it off. Dave lands a jab, and it snaps Johnny's head back. That the punches from Dave were noticeably heavier than the punches from Johnny, just like in the first fight. That difference in power, thudding power. Johnny, still the busier fighter throughout, as stated, lots of jab work, lots of movement. So he's still winning rounds, but you did get a sense of danger whenever Dave lets his hands go and gets in with something. Round after round, Dave Allen is getting closer and closer to the target. You're seeing more and more exchanges. And in the fifth, well, you saw what happened. Dave gets in with a hard right hand, looked like it landed on the top of Johnny's head, noticeably rattled. Noticeably hurt, Dave pours it on, scores the first knockdown of the fight. Johnny Fischer rises to his feet, but you could look at his legs and see this guy's not recovered. He's badly hurt. Sensing that he had his man in trouble, Dave took action, goes in for the kill. Starts pouring it on, they exchange. Dave gets in with a whopper of a left hook, lands right on the chin, right on the button. And he drops Johnny Fischer like a sack of potatoes as the towel comes in from Johnny Fischer's corner. They knew he's not going to recover from this, but by the time that towel lands, Johnny is already on the floor. Johnny hits the deck. I think that Johnny found his level. Nothing against him. These are harsh realities. There's no nice way to describe him getting knocked out. It was the great boxing beats and rhymes that once described karma in the sport of boxing, that Johnny, you didn't win that first fight. You got away with the decision. He didn't deserve that decision, but it was given to him so that karma could come back around in the second fight. So if things would have happened the way they were supposed to, well, Johnny would have been coming off a loss, and that would have forced him to go back to the drawing board, go back in the lab, and work on things. But because you got away with a victory, it's a false sense of security. So what's next for the White Rhino? What's next for Dave Allen? I remember hearing during Fight Week that the winner of this fight would face the winner of the Adilier versus TKV rematch. That's a good scrap. I could go for that. Dave Allen remains an interesting character in the domestic British boxing scene, bit of a cult favorite. Reactions to the fight, another one of Eddie Hearns' hype jobs has been exposed. That's what I heard people saying, and I'm just wondering, what is this axe to grind that they have with Eddie? At least on a Matchroom show, you know there's a chance the favorite might lose. The house fighter might lose. That it's not preordained. It's not scripted like what you see on some other boxing promotions. The so obvious chicanery we see in other contests involving other fighters, whereas on Matchroom, anyone from Mark Castro to Johnny Fischer took a loss. Anyone from Jack Catterall to Jahan Ingram. I mean, that's why I like the Matchroom brand, because it feels like boxing. Anything can happen. It doesn't feel like the WWE. And a testament to the British boxing scene, because here you have a domestic level fight, a domestic level show that delivered more so than the Times Square show 2 weeks ago with all of those quote-unquote big names. Theo, Ryan, Devin. This show, which was a domestic level show at the very best, was more entertaining and ended in more spectacular fashion than any fight on the Times Square bill. So where does Johnny Fischer go from here? He just suffered his first recorded loss, and it was a bad one. You know, Dave Allen dropped him like a bad habit, like a sack of potatoes. Can he still have a successful boxing career, and can he rebound off this loss? I suppose that all depends on what you define as being successful. Maybe he can't get past domestic level. Maybe he's not cut out for world level, but he can still have fights, and he can still make money. Some would define that as being successful. Build himself back up, maybe win some area level titles, and things like that. Some might call that successful. The way it's often thought of among boxing fans is that if a guy can't make it to world level to a world title, then the career was an unsuccessful one. They don't really think of boxing as a profession. They have a very two-dimensional view of this occupation. It's not wide-eyed optimism talking. Johnny's only 26. He only has one recorded loss. It happens. He can bounce back from it. Maybe he doesn't have the ingredients to become a world champion, but he can find some success in spots.
Dave Allen has, and he has 7 losses.
So he can do it. Congratulations to Dave Allen for upsetting the apple cart and taking it out of the judge's hands in the second fight the way he didn't in the first. They weren't going to job him this time.
Yeah, he didn't let him.
Terrence and Canelo.
If they're each going to fight, really fight, I think it's terrific. It's very interesting. But again, if I had to pay money to watch that fight, I wouldn't do it because Canelo has shown in his last few fights that he's just a businessman. He's not in there to entertain the public. He just takes the big check.
This is the part where the Canelo Alvarez fans go on the attack, attacking Bob Arum for saying anything disparaging about their idol, about their icon. I myself am a Canelo Alvarez fan, but I don't view him through rose-tinted lenses, and I myself would not say that his last few fights or his last few performances have been at all inspired.
Inspiring.
There does seem to be a noticeable difference between the Canelo that beat up Billy Joe Saunders and Caleb Plant and the Canelo before us here today. That, too much success.
It breeds complacency. You're not going to fight with a sense of urgency anymore. If you're making all this money and you're getting all these accolades, history.
Now, of course, some of the blame has to be levied towards Canelo's opponents because they're the ones that really went in there for a check. They didn't put on inspiring performances either.
They didn't try.
But some of that blame must also go to Canelo.
But again, if Canelo really fights, because I think it's safe to say Terrence always fights. He doesn't know anything else. So then it could be a very good, interesting fight.
What about criticizing Terrence Crawford? Has he given us any reason to do so? And I would say that Terrence could stand to be a bit more active.
Though I'm not sure how much of that is his fault. When the majority of his welterweight campaign, he was frozen out by the PBC. They wanted to do a round robin amongst themselves, among their own fighters. Everybody knows that.
Yeah, Terrence has been fighting once a year for the last 5 going on 6 years, as of 2020. But a lot of that was politics. A lot of that was the PBC freezing that guy out. You're gonna blame him for that?
And when he left Top Rank.
When they tried to negotiate the Spence fight, and it fell through, he did take a keep busy fight with David Evanesian.
And the year that he fought Errol Spence Jr., did you guys forget that Errol had a rematch clause that he activated 2 weeks after the fight?
That's what held him up in 2023, the remainder of it.
Just to end up walking away.
What I'm getting at is, it's a bit short-sighted to say that Terrence could stand to be more active when there have been extenuating circumstances throughout the years. Canelo has been comparatively more active,
Albeit less inspiring.
so maybe Canelo could stand to fight with a bit more spirit, and maybe Terrence could stand to be a bit more active. It just is what it is.
You've always praised Terrence as a special fighter. Do you think he can beat Canelo?
Who is Canelo? What Canelo is going to show up? The Canelo who's looking to cash a big check, or the Canelo that really wants to fight like a fighter? Now, the Canelo we've seen the last 2 years is not only boring, but doesn't really have an incentive to mix it up and to entertain people with a good fight. So again,
There are people that will hear none of it. Any disparaging word against Canelo, they're going to fly off the handle.
They're gonna shit their pants. They're gonna have a tantrum.
Though being objective, yeah, maybe Canelo's taken his foot off the gas since becoming undisputed champion at super middleweight. Maybe he doesn't fight with the same sense of urgency, and complacency is going to set in for somebody who's having that much success. You might go the rest of your career on cruise control.
Over 600,000 people bought the Edgar Berlanga fight. You understand that? Nobody thought Edgar Berlanga stood a chance against Canelo, and he still sold 600,000 pay-per-views. Still made millions upon millions of dollars. In an environment like that, complacency is going to set in. Then you have Turkey step in. He's giving you even more money to go in there and fight William Skull. Guy nobody knows, guy everybody favors you to beat. More complacency. It's not so much the blame game as an occupational hazard. These are not the kind of guys that perhaps motivate Canelo to try harder. The ability is still there, but not the motivation.
But give him credit. Terence Crawford hasn't been that way. Terence Crawford is a real old-school professional fighter who wants to do his best every fight that he's in.
This fight has become a polarizing subject in many different boxing circles because many people have strong opinions about Canelo Alvarez, about Terence Crawford.
You really can't talk about this fight in a public space without somebody arguing with you about it. Here's what I think.
I might be a Canelo Alvarez fan, but I, like Bob Arum, don't think he's been fighting with a sense of urgency the last few fights, and why would he? He's been in no immediate danger. He wasn't under threat of losing to Edgar Berlanga or Jaime Munguia or Jermel Charlo.
With guys like that, he can coast. He can win the fight on autopilot because he's better than they are. Now, maybe with Terence, he'll take the assignment a bit more seriously because he's fighting another pound-for-pound fighter like himself.
You're Canelo Alvarez. You've been in there with anyone from Floyd Mayweather, to Miguel Cotto, to Gennady Golovkin 3 times, Daniel Jacobs.
You've been champion at 4 weights, unified in one, undisputed in another. Maybe you get bored.
Professional boxer since age 15 with over 60 fights on his CV. Millions upon millions of dollars. On track to surpass Floyd Mayweather in career earnings.
Those things in mind, I don't think that Bob Arum is out of line when he says that Canelo's turned into a businessman. He's not going out there to entertain the public. He doesn't feel the need to do so. He's going to cut the big check and go home.
That's what makes the fight interesting, though. That Terence, if he's hungry and Canelo is complacent, in spite of Terence being older and smaller, the smaller guy moving up, that extra inch,
wanting it more than the other guy, being slightly more switched on, that might be enough to win a fight.
It might. Unless Canelo actually gets out of bed for this one, knowing that he's fighting the caliber of fighter that he's fighting, he'll take him more seriously at least, than he took Edgar Berlanga.
It's intriguing.
One of the dangers with that reserve, that complacency, is you're only really throwing 1 or 2 punches at a time, and these are punches that you're loading up on. Terence, if he uses his height and his length and his movement,
his counters,
if he is switched on and you're not, with your diminished output, that you're not really trying and you're not really putting them together as much as you used to, you could lose this thing.
Now, before the Canelo Alvarez fans start peeing and shitting in the comments section, yeah, Terence could lose too. He could get knocked out. Never dismiss that possibility.
But if you're gonna get upset every time I entertain both scenarios, you may as well not bother with YouTubers and podcasters if you only want to hear the story told a certain way. Why are you even bothering with other people's opinions if yours are so strong?